So today I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the plight of the working class. And I want to do this by examining a few tweets of AOC's and the response of certain Republican officials on the topic of AOC's history as a waitress before becoming a congressperson. Jumping right in, AOC on December 3rd tweeted, "Republicans like to make fun of the fact that I used to be a waitress. But we all know if they ever had to do a double, they'd be the ones found crying in the walk-in fridge halfway through their first shift because someone yelled at them for bringing seltzer when they wanted sparkling." And when looking at this tweet, I want to use it as a springboard to talk about the abuse that goes on in the service industry towards workers. I myself have worked in a supermarket before, and a number of my friends have worked in restaurants, and people I've known have worked in restaurants over the years. And I'm going to be real, I don't think I could handle working in a restaurant. It's a really stressful environment from what I've heard from people. The amount that you have to deal with from customers who just generally look down on you and just see you as the help. The amount of people who demean you by giving you less tips for even the slightest transgression. It makes it a humiliating experience to go through. And that's just dealing with the customer side of things. You know, there's all those little nuanced things from customers, but that's just that one side of things. That's not even dealing with the way management treats you. That's not talking about how bookkeepers and schedule managers treat you when you try to talk about your pay or try to talk about any of the issues around your schedule, like needing more or less hours or needing certain days off because you have anything that you need to do. Or in the worst case scenarios when it comes to scheduling, having to take extra shifts because another person's sick in your company. And if you say no, you can often be penalized because you weren't there in time. That's not even factoring into the fact that when it comes to scheduling, people aren't given their schedules on a regular basis, nor are they given it in a timely manner in order to schedule anything else in their life. If you're not there to serve that restaurant, to serve that company, in many people's lived realities and experiences, you don't have a job. You have to serve that company. That's it. And this isn't even coming into the understanding that there's very little in the way of, actual recognition for putting yourself out there. There's very little in the way of benefits. There's certainly no unionization in most restaurants. So what do people have? And this is why me as a leftist, I speak to values that involve the workers having a say in their jobs, where they're not being demeaned all the time, where a customer bad-mouthing you to a manager doesn't get you in trouble even though you listened to the possibly illegal, possibly immoral, and certainly degrading policies of a manager who doesn't respect you or want to treat you well. The combination of that customer-manager relationship often leaves the worker on the back end of things. And with that said, AOC's tweet received the following response from Representative Paul Mitchell. "The comment is ridiculous stereotyping. I delivered newspaper year-round, on foot or on my bike for several years, worked numerous doubles in respiratory therapy where a mistake could result in death, worked nearly full-time to pay for college. What do I not understand?" And so with this tweet, I want to speak to the difference between working in the past and working in the present. First and foremost, back then, working could net you a chance at paying for college, at getting a job, getting a house with the little bit that you got from your job. It would allow you to possibly pay for a car and get the basic necessities of life. Nowadays, if you're working, you're barely making your rent on a part-time job. And full-time employment is next to impossible. And because of the scheduling issues I mentioned previously, it's often difficult to manage and maneuver two different jobs if they're not willing to work with you. And that is the lived reality and experience of a lot of people today. The number of people who have to work full-time to somehow manage and juggle the need for food, for shelter, for medicine, for any other resource, let alone buying a house, buying a car, and having any of these dream luxuries that we'd love to have that seem to be handed to people back in the day when unions might have actually been able to work with people. And unions actually seem to have some power in this country. These are pipe dreams for most people in this day and age. So no, Paul Mitchell, you did all of that in a very different reality. You did that in a very different experience. That work could actually mean you getting a decent life. Nowadays, you're just working. And there's no time for anything else. And so AOC ended up responding to that particular tweet by saying, "My comments were directed at Republicans who mock my history in service work. That includes President Trump, who you've stood by and defended through such attacks, by the way. But if that boorishness doesn't apply to you, then why feel the rush to defend yourself?" And with that, I want to talk about these attacks that are happening to AOC, because I think there's a form of classism going on here, where people who have experienced a certain amount of good fortune in their life, through financial means, etc., and a lot of luck, to be honest, are not happy that someone like AOC is able to pull herself up from being, just a waitress, right? Just a waitress, to becoming a congressperson, to becoming a person who now has a voice that represents a large section of the population and has done it without having to appeal to the corporate backing, without having to appeal to the standard practices that get most politicians in play. She was able to be funded by the people, and she is one of the people. She knows what it's like to work hard. And I think that threatens a lot of people in power. I think that scares a lot of people who have a desire to protect a certain set of establishment ideals. And so I think that this attack on her is, generally speaking, designed to tear her down for her doing the exact thing that they claim most Americans should be able to do, to, pick themselves up by their bootstraps and to rise out of poverty. And, she also got made fun of, from what I understand, for not being able to afford the rent on her apartment in DC when she went to Congress for the first time. As if she was just spending all this money in luxury. And it's like a lot of these people who are criticizing her do not understand the reality of today. They don't understand where she comes from. And I don't think, quite honestly, they want to, because she's a threat. And so another situation that happened I'm going to play this clip. There was...
These people are nuts. It's not just Chuck.
Oh, whoops, sorry. There was a clip from Dan Crenshaw of Texas who talked about his position on AOC's tweet and the general position of her being a waitress.
Chuck Schumer is controlled by people like AOC, who believes that the biggest hardship in life was figuring out whether it was still or sparkling. And you don't know hardship until you've cried in the back.
You can just hear them laughing, right? It's so funny.
I was like, geez, I am so glad I did not have to do that in my former career. That was our biggest problem in the mountains of Afghanistan, was figuring, do we offer them still or sparkling? And what if they don't like it? It's rough out there, man. That's Congress these days. We cannot give these people control. We cannot give these people control.
So with that particular response...
These people are nuts. It's not just...
Oh, I wanted to play again. With that particular response, I don't doubt the difficulties that Dan Crenshaw had to deal with being in the military. I don't doubt the experience that he dealt with in that whole experience. What I'm questioning is why it is that we're talking about tearing down one person's hardship in labor for another's. Why is it that there's this trend especially amongst right-wingers and conservative and reactionary types, to sit there and attack people who have had to go through hardship instead of lifting them up and banding together. Why is it that there is a need, almost like this bizarre need, to tear at people who have gone through a different type of hardship, who have experienced a different type of that same class warfare? Because if you were a soldier on the ground, then you're dealing with a lot of hardship. Like, I'm not trying to take that away from Dan Crenshaw. But that doesn't mean AOC didn't deal with abuse. That doesn't mean that AOC didn't deal with all the things that I've mentioned previously, from customers treating her like crap and demeaning her. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't be striving for something better. And for Dan Crenshaw to think that that's how the working class poor in this country should be treated, I move forward to the last tweet from AOC that I'm going to look at today. The GOP acts like they care, but behind closed doors, this is what they actually say about the working class. Good to know how little you truly think of food workers, Dan Crenshaw. I wonder, did you have catering while bonding with wealthy donors over your disdain for the poor? And I think that speaks volumes. Because caterers or restaurant workers are people that we come across in our daily lives. They are the working class. There's this image that I feel like a lot of conservatives and Republicans and reactionary types like to purport is the working class. It's people wearing overalls, going to a factory job, maybe people working in, certain sectors of, these type of jobs. It's the military person. And mind you, I am not criticizing if you've been in the military to get through whatever you needed to get through in your life. In fact, I would find solidarity with somebody who's been in the military, because I think they're part of a similar process of exploitation. But I think we need to address that the working class is not this white person in these blue overalls working in a factory anymore. And it probably never was. There's a huge amount of history of women of color having to work well before white women went into the workplace. There is a huge, huge history of that. And when you talk about the working class poor, you are talking about people working in restaurants. You are talking about people working in supermarkets. You are talking about people who have to deal with daily grind and drudgery. And they come in all shapes and varieties and types. It is not just one specific group of people, like the Republicans like to purport. It is a wide, wide array of people. And we need to acknowledge that. We need to acknowledge that all of these people have social justice issues, that they all have class struggle, and they need to unify together and deal with the actual plight of the working class, not by tearing each other down, not by being threatened by someone like AOC who wants to see people have a better life, by not demeaning the workers in your daily lived experience. If more people were actually able to take service jobs, I think you'd see how quick you get demeaned and looked down upon. And maybe people would think twice about how they treat the person that works at the restaurant, the person who works at their local store, the person who is the cashier on the checkout line. With that said, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. You can check out and follow me on Twitter and check out my Discord in the description down below. And with that said, my name is Anarchist Tara, and I hope you enjoyed watching.